Good evening. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Town of Pittsburgh, regular meeting Monday, May 22nd, 2023. And it is our custom, and I ask you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Commissioner Farrell, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. You have your agenda before you, and I'll accept a motion either to approve the agenda as proposed or a motion to modify the agenda.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
By Commissioner Farrell, the motion is made to approve, seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. I'd like to introduce us this evening. We have Commissioner Jay Farrell, Commissioner Kyle Shipp, Commissioner James Vose. I'm Cindy Perry, the mayor. Our mayor pro-tem is on vacation, and so we hope that Pamela Baldwin is having a wonderful time away from the desk. John Bonitz, our commissioner. We have our town manager, Jonathan Franklin. Seated next to him is Paul Messick, the town attorney, and our town clerk, Carrie Bailey. Behind there is Heather Meacham, Randy Cahoon Tingle, Kent Jackson, and Janie Phelps has just taken an exit. She'll be presenting later on. So at this time, I would like to read and ask for unity on a proclamation honoring Racial Amity Day, June the 11th, 2023. We're doing this, of course, because we don't meet until after this this day is done. So this is a proclamation to honor that day. Whereas the town of Pittsburgh, North Carolina joins other municipalities, states, and organizations in recognizing Racial Amity Day on the second Sunday of the month of June, 2023. And whereas the greatest asset of the town of Pittsburgh, North Carolina is its people, and whereas we adhere to and hold dear the motto of the United States of America, E pluribus unum, out of many, one, which reflects the importance of all people in our country and our community. And whereas the town of Pittsburgh recognizes the principle of the oneness of humankind and the rich cultural, ethnic, and racial diversity of its inhabitants and forebearers. And whereas the town of Pittsburgh invites individuals, communities, and neighborhoods to appreciate the beauty and richness of our diverse cultures and ethnicities, and to strengthen bonds of respect, caring, and amity between one another. Now, therefore, the mayor and board of commissioners proclaim June the 11th, 2023 as Racial Amity Day, joining together to celebrate all the people of Pittsburgh and to commit to the principle of oneness, caring, friendship, and peace. Proclaim this the 22nd day of May, 2023. And may I have a motion by the board to accept this proclamation?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
The motion is unanimous. And along with our former mayor, Jim Noss, who, thank you, Jim, had suggested this. He felt strongly about this proclamation and asked us to do that. And with him is Malcolm Henry. And we welcome the two of you. And thank you so much for giving us this wonderful proclamation for.
Thank the board for passing this. It means a lot to the citizens of Pittsburgh and Jeff County. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right. We now are in the section of citizens matters, and the manager, Jonathan Franklin, has an update, and we look forward to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Duke Power will be replacing the lights on Main Street. This is north of the circle. Those are the decorative lights that are along those on both sides of the sidewalk, both sides of the street. They'll also be adding new lights at the SoCo district, which is across the street where we've had some concern about lighting and people not being able to see. We hope to see that June 5th. And they will also be replacing the wooden poles and streetlights around the circle. And that will be in late summer. Sorry about that. The lights in the trees downtown will also be slated to replace in the next couple of weeks. So you should see all new lighting in downtown within the next month or two. The county demo permit was pulled by a demo company for 196 Hillsborough Street. That happened Friday. So there is some movement on that aspect. And we recently, actually this morning, we were fortunate to hire a new public works director, Daniel Snipes, who comes to us from Carborough as the interim public works director there. He comes with 17 years of experience in multiple municipalities doing that same work. And his first day will be June 12th, and he'll be at that meeting to introduce himself. And working with Elena Keegan with the COG, we should have an agreement for this board's approval in the coming weeks for the strategic framework, and hopefully go from there to climate action plans. So we'll have all that to you real soon. And then, of course, you have another item for the manager's update. It's just an attachment of information items. Previously, these have been included as the consent agenda or in the consent agenda for items. But since they don't need approval, we're just going to be adding those as information item only. So if you have any questions about any of those, please just get with me. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. As for my update, I continue a recitation of the number of ribbon cuttings we have done recently. Marigold Art and Vintage on West Street, the Traveling Cafe, the 162 units of apartments out at the Guild at the Mosaic, all were cut just in the last 2 weeks since our last meeting. I attended on the 17th of May, a group which was entitled Chatham Leads. It's a organization which is going to bring together the UNC Keenan Flagler School of Business, along with government and other organizations here to try to create greater assistance with growth and understanding between government and business. And that was an initiative by the chairman of the county commissioners, Karen Howard, and it was a very lovely event. On the 19th, I met with members of the Third Wave Housing Group, and I would like to remind folks that WCHL does a Chatham Roundup on Tuesdays at 4:30 following our board meetings on Monday. Whenever anybody feels that they'd like to, more than glad to have you pitch in and do the roundup. I do it most of the time, and perhaps we could get a new manager, or I think that Commissioner Shipp has expressed an interest in you've done it a time or two, and it's a lot of fun. You can do it just from the privacy of your own home without going into the studio. A reminder that on June the 14th at 9 o'clock, we will be taking a field trip to the Sunoco recycling facility in Raleigh. This is the handler of our recycling through GFL, our waste disposal folks. And this is an effort for us to understand procedures and how we can make our recycling more efficient. So if you are planning to go on that, if you would please let me know. And it may not sound like a junket, but it could be a bad pun and a fun trip. So thank you. So sorry.
You better not be. That was great.
Commissioner Vose, Commissioner Bonitz.
Oh, all right. I do not have an update from the County Climate Change Advisory Committee. And one item, I guess, that I would share as gratitude, and I could share one concern. Thank you, Chief Shorty, again, to your department for continued efforts on traffic calming throughout town. I was very pleased to see an officer putting up a speed monitoring device on Thompson Street. And as many times as people have asked for such things, I feel it's a little bit repetitive, but I do want to repeat myself, my gratitude for your department's work in this regard. And the other item I've already addressed, so I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Farrell, and could I remind everybody, we need to speak up for some members of the audience. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I hate to interrupt, but I've been zooming in on the meetings. And when they're held over here, the audio, even on Zoom, you cannot understand. So I come here tonight. Now I must probably classify as a senior citizen, but I still cannot hear 50% of what y'all say.
Okay.
I don't know where audio can't be turned up. If that's the case, spend a couple $100 to get it where you can get it. Whether it's in Zoom or in person. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Not a problem. We need to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. I don't think you'll have any problem hearing me though, but I attended the PBA meeting Wednesday. It was very interesting. Dr. Anthony Jackson, the school superintendent in Tallahassee, gave a pretty nice presentation. They're experiencing the same issues we are here in Pittsburgh, which is growth. But he did make a comment that, you know, something brought up regarding some of the major problems in the school. And he said, believe it or not, it's not bullying, it's not afternoon fights, it's vaping. That is the #1 problem in Chatham County schools. So pass that on to your kids or grandkids or whatever, but that is a big problem in Chatham County schools. I also attended the regionalization merger meeting this morning with Sanford, and more details on that will come at a later date. Thank you.
Commissioner Shipp.
Yes. Our next AHAC meeting is June 1st, affordable housing. So we'll attend that. The economic development meeting was Thursday. It's Thursday. Jonathan was able to attend that and introduce himself to that group. Some of the terms on that board are coming up, and we're also expanding the size of that board. So there will be 4 positions open available on that board. So if anyone's interested, let me know. The FedEx building is almost complete down in Moncure. So that site near VinFast is starting to look like more of something. And then we also had a brief discussion about tourism and lodging taxes and things like that as a hotel is being built in Pittsburgh. I had the meeting this morning and this afternoon in Pittsburgh, in Sanford. It ended up. And so just, you know, good progress on the regionalization project. And next meeting we'll have a major discussion about that in our meeting. So lots to come on that. On track to present at our next meeting, have a public hearing on June 26th, and then looking for adoption of that agreement towards the end of July. So lots of professionals assisting us in that effort. So
Thank you. Commissioner Vose.
On Tuesday, the 16th, Waylon and I met with Commissioner Bonitz and Apex Mayor Chuck Gilbert, as well as some friends from Pittsburgh at the Apex Skate Park. And we're really just wowed at the sheer number of people that were using that skate park at dinner time on a random Tuesday. There was just everybody was out there. People were stopping and talking, families, single people, kids, high school kids, everybody was out there. You can't fake that. It's worth checking out. On June 17th, which was last Wednesday, I went to the Chatham Leads event put on by the UNC Keenan Flagler Business School. Saw Mayor Perry there and Jonathan Franklin, as Mayor Perry mentioned. Lots of enthusiastic discussion about collaboration and strategic partnerships. And then also on the 17th, I had dinner with the Pittsburgh Citizens Academy and got just a really great needed dose of community enthusiasm. So thank you for that,
And a good day.
Colby and everyone that attended.
I neglected as we were going around introducing staff to look on my right. And speaking of Colby Sawyer is our communications person and our emergency preparedness person. And he has been the leader and teacher for Pittsburgh 101, which is the group of 20 intrepid citizens of Chatham County who came to learn about the town of Pittsburgh, its budget, and how it functions. So we thank Colby for that effort. And sitting next to him, of course, is Chief Shorty Johnson. And Katie Keller is in the back. Katie is our Parks Director. And so she is sitting on the back row. We have the consent agenda next. Oh, excuse me. We have public comment next, which is signed up are Richard Angino and Jeff Holman. And I don't know how you want to speak in what order or whatever, but Richard, if you want to start us off on your public comment.
Yeah, thanks for good evening, everyone. Thanks for letting me join you. I'm actually the developer for the retreat at Pittsburgh. And so along the way here, we went through all the approvals to build that. And I was asked a question recently, and I wanted to talk about a couple of things. One of which was the big puzzle, which I've been involved since 2017 with the coalition and others trying to come up with rules for and incentives of how you can make affordable housing happen in Pittsburgh and Chatham. And also I was part of a group called Folks for Good Housing in Winston-Salem. So we have a metro aspect of that, and that's where I'm based, is Winston-Salem. And we're coming up with some big macro numbers, and I'll just kind of go over a bit of this. We kind of have a soundbite, a kind of a short kind of challenges we have right now in North Carolina, but we basically are getting 114,000 new persons moving to North Carolina each year. That's not people, that is actually the net number. We have, for that group, we basically need about 57,000 homes. And that's a combination of rentals and for sale product. And if usually you assume that that's apartments is about a third of that, that's about 18,000 apartments. These numbers are just for a year. So you kind of get an idea of what type of numbers we're dealing with. If you take the area of that, that's about 16 square miles that we need of new housing for the state of North Carolina, just to put it in perspective. Some of the interesting and kind of the troubling part of this is how the demographics of that growth is happening. We have over 50% of those folks are moving to North Carolina for the lifestyle and for retirement. It's not for jobs, and it's not for some of the things we specifically have thought about, but it's more of where Pittsburgh's positioned itself, which is being really a lifestyle area itself. The other thing is that over 50% of those folks are 55 and older. So this is not 20-somethings moving to North Carolina. This is a lot of older folks. And then the other part of the aspect that's eye-opening, and this all comes from North Carolina, the demographic side, is almost 70% of those folks make more than $100,000. So when we're talking about affordable housing and trying to get rental apartments that are $800, we're also competing with folks who are coming in with incomes that are over $100,000, which have the ability to buy into existing apartments or buy into housing fairly easily in these markets. The other aspect of that is about 44% of that make over $150,000. So we're getting, and when you look at North Carolina as a whole, we're not anywhere near those rates of the folks who are kind of coming in. And I'm not saying anything bad, because there's a good and bad of kind of the changing demographics related to it. Employers are going to places where workforce housing is available. I think we've seen that in Winston-Salem quite a bit. We've lost some organizations because they couldn't answer the question about where all their new employees, their 600 new employees, are going to live. And I think that's becoming the distinguishing point. And where a lot of the big metros right now are concentrating on housing. And they're spending really, I mean, pretty substantial numbers, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 per person household to do those. But the idea is that basically the having the housing allows the employers to come in, which it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where it then fills in the tax revenue and kind of pays for the other portion of it, which is how you can get to have them in the first place. The way I look at it is kind of like the mill villages. 100 years ago, the mill villages, 100 years ago, I mean, they built the mill villages not to be friendly, not to say, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a baseball team? But they said, we need the employees. Let's get the employees here. And the first thing they started with was housing. And we're kind of back into that. What's fascinating is we're almost back to where we were 100 years ago, which is we need to figure out how to house the folks who work in our restaurants and everything else related to it. I started working on this challenge back in 2013 when I worked with the mayor of Graham and several other mayors who kept coming up to me and saying, Richard, you do housing, you've done it for over 30 years. Why aren't we getting a new apartments that are affordable in our communities? And basically the answer was, it all comes down to what rents can you charge in these areas? And basically having lower rents means you have a lower loan, which means you have less money for construction costs is the fundamental. And it's simple math. So the idea is you have to figure out how to fill those gaps related to it. Pretty much the way we look at markets is the blank amount of rent you need in order to make this market work. And if you can't get in the number right now is about $1,600 for a 2-bedroom. Just to put in perspective for people to do new construction, is that's the naturally occurring housing level itself. Oops, sorry, I switched pages. So I've been doing this for 30 years, been working with Pittsburgh for about 6 years now. We started off by doing Siler School, which was over in Siler City. And that was basically Chatham County figuring out that they had a shortage of employees for the new chicken plant, as well as they were losing some housing there. And they basically, I got involved in, and some of you guys were involved in it too. We got on a bus and drove Chatham County and looked for parcels. And it's there's very slim amount of properties that are available at the scale for you to be able to do apartments in that level itself. We found the Pittsburgh site, and just a bit of background for folks who aren't familiar with it, very small commercial infill. It was basically an unloved parcel, which is what I tend to do. I tend to do historic buildings and other unloved parcels, and because they're part challenge and they're also part of what we have left, unless we go farther and farther out and fill in the green spaces in that side. What we've learned with Folks for Good Housing is some of the best tools. And I think this was one of the things I was asked to comment about. Is I've read through the same as you guys did, all the different proposed changes and some of the incentives, and a lot of them sound really good on a piece of paper, but then in reality, what's working, what's not working. One thing for you to know is it's not working in any of these places perfectly. So there's no great city who has it all figured out. Everybody's figuring out little pieces of it. I think some of the stuff I would talk about is the carrots seem to be working better than the stick, in the sense that having incentives for people to build affordable housing is more advantageous in getting it happen, other than having a regulation that says you have to build it. So that's one of the things. I think the number one thing I would put on the list is local support. And that's what we saw when we built the retreat of Pittsburgh, was anytime we had questions or we had some density issues we had to deal with and some other things, we came in here and there was staff, and there was also folks in this meeting who would basically look at it with a rational idea of how do we make this reasonable. And that's probably the first thing we do when we look at new cities. The first thing we do when we leave and meet with the town manager, the mayor, and some other folks, we're back in the car, and then we're deciding, okay, is that a place we want to work or not? I think that's one of the things that never shows up on any of these lists, which is how do you build an environment where people want to be here and they feel that they're not going naked with it, in the sense that if there's something comes up, they know they're going to be able to figure it out. And that's an important thing. The other thing we've seen is speed. And a lot of these things don't cost any money. It's just more of a philosophical way you tackle housing. A good amount of cities have this step in front of the line process, which, and especially when you're dealing with the big metros, being able to shave off 6 months from your, or even 2 months has a huge value in it. And that's a lot of them have set that up. So another thing which is costs nothing, which is a hand holding, which is having somebody who coordinates and basically holds your hand. And so when you get lost in the city, in the structure and the county approvals, they're the ones who can pick up the phone and say, no, you need to talk to Mary, not Jack, because Mary's out, this one. So that's related to that. Local funding, because it all comes down to math, which is local funding. Some things we've seen that have been really good is waiving upfront permitting fees, and waiving of utility connection fees. One place that's creative, and a lot of people don't think about it, which is funding of offsite work with aspects where the county or the city can actually have ability to get money quite a bit less than a private developer can. This is a lot of times of doing sidewalks, infrastructure, lift stations, those types of things where the city can get a grant, and especially a lot of the RD or the rural development cities have the ability to get money at really affordable level to do some of this infrastructure things. Refundable, another one is aspect is refundable tax, real estate taxes. It's becoming almost every place has it. It's called different things. You know, technically you can't do a tax abatement, but most cities have figured out how to basically have a refundable amount of money coming back that's equal to what the taxes are. And then there's been some cities who have just been pretty prominent and say, okay, we're going to make it an abatement, come sue us. And they haven't gotten sued. I haven't seen working in the aspect, which is density bonuses. I think the idea is if you're going to build 150 units, if you can get an extra 10 units on there and you'll make them affordable, it's still the math that they can't by just having the ability to do more units for them, unless they're charging that $1,600 for a 2-bedroom. It just mathematically doesn't work. Reduction of parking requirements is another one that comes up quite a bit. I've never seen how that actually benefits, other than like a downtown metro that has a train station and other places where people have the ability to live without a car. Most of North Carolina, you gotta have a car. Even our affordable properties, everyone has a car related to that. And then the requirement to build affordable housing just doesn't seem like it's been working. So we learned a lot of positives out of when we did the retreat of Pittsburgh. And remember, this was basically for us to do an experiment to say, okay, let's build one. Let's see what we're learning and what works, what doesn't work. A couple current puzzles that I wanted to bring up, and I've been talking with different folks already about, but we thought we had a tax abatement or refundable taxes. I went through out of the coalition. We missed this step, which was basically there was a proposal to make a refundable taxes. We underwrote the property with no taxes. We did Siler City School, and we actually got a tax abatement letter. And we thought, okay, Chatham County is fine with this. We're 100% affordable. After we did Pittsburgh, and we ended up going to our permanent loan, and we filed the tax, basically what we had done before for the abatement. And we were told, you can't get a tax abatement on this one because of the structure. Since it wasn't a nonprofit. But then also said, oh, by the way, Siler City, which you got an abatement letter, that's wrong. Here's our bill for the last 2 years worth of taxes. So we're kind of stuck on that aspect at the moment. The county is working with us right now for their trust fund, for the housing trust fund, to basically be able to fund back the portion of the county's portion of it. But I'd like to also talk with you folks at some point about seeing if I can get the city part or the town part of the taxes back. That equates to about, I think it's about $9,000 on the annual side. Now, one of the leverages when we're talking about affordability is that us not having to pay that taxes basically allowed us to get a loan that was about $300,000 larger. So that's one of those tools that's really powerful, which is having these abilities to say, we want to do housing, we won't charge you these fees, and therefore you can get a loan that can help fund all the other things related to it. The second aspect that we're hitting and
Excuse me, Richard. I just wanted to say, I didn't know if Jeff was going to speak or not.
yes,
I think we're ready to hear from him if you could wind up.
when that's the next subject, actually.
Okay.
The second thing is the utilities, the water usage itself. And he's going to be talking to you about that. Good timing.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Holloman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Partnership Property Management. We are an affordable housing management company that operates primarily in North Carolina. We manage about 275 properties across 5 states, but the majority of those are in North Carolina. As Richard mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about the water fees. The way it's currently structured, the 48 units at Pittsboro, we're being charged about $2,100 a month just in base fees, and that's before we use a drop of water. And that's a lot for any apartment complex, but when our rents are, kept down to be affordable, it really hurts. That's about $25,500 a year in base fees that we're paying. Our average bill, to put it in perspective, is about $3,600. And so 2,100 of that is those base fees, which is the majority of that. I would like to ask the town to consider restructuring the way you do fees to align with a lot of other towns that we see in cities across the state, and maybe create more tiers of meters and, increase the charges as you have a larger meter. But the way it's currently set up, you may have a really large commercial building using tons of water, but they're paying $80 in base fees a month. And while we're using not that much water, we're paying just a tremendous amount of base fees. It also does not really incentivize green practices the way it's set up, because 2/3 of our bill is base fees and only 1/3 is usage. There's really not a lot of incentive for us to go and spend money to put in water saving devices that would reduce the usage for the town as a whole, because we're only going to see a very small benefit from that, since just such a small part of our bill is actually usage. I'm working on a project right now to install devices at several other sites we manage where it's more usage based. And, for $10,000, some of these devices can get a payback in a month. I'm sorry, in a year for a $10,000 device. So there are some really good water saving devices out there if the structure was a little bit different. And I think a lot of your businesses would do that as well if you base the bills more on usage versus those base rates. So I think that would be a good reason to do that. And really just for a small amount tacked onto that usage charge across the board per month, you could make up for for reducing those base charges on apartment complexes. Right. So I jumped around a little bit, so I don't want to cover things twice. I looked at Wilmington just as an example, and they've got, a 5/8 inch, 1 inch, 1.5, 2, 3, all the way up to 12-inch base charges. And as you get up to the bigger ones, it is, $2,000 a month, but that's only going to be some kind of industrial practice going on. And then they have just one usage fee for sewer and one for water that they use. And the tiered usage, we do see that a lot in different towns. So the more you use, the more you pay. But we're kind of getting hit twice as an apartment complex with that usage, because we're paying, 2 apartments are using the lower rates, and then every apartment after that, we're over the 6,000 gallons. One other issue that we had was just, there's really nowhere in the rate sheet that says that apartment complexes are going to be charged the way that they are. So it took us months of trying to figure out what was going on. We thought we had a leak. We checked for leaks. I know the utility director position's been open for a while. So we really didn't have a good resource to go to. So it took a while to figure out exactly what was going on with these bills and why we were being charged such a high amount, because there's nothing on the rate sheet that says that you're going to be charged per unit. The rate sheet solely bases it on less than an inch or greater than an inch. So based on the rate sheet, we really should be paying a couple $100 a month in base charges if you read it just the way it's written versus that $2,100 that we are being charged. Okay.
Jeff, thank you very much. I think
Okay.
that we had a meeting the other day in which Randy and the manager and I and Richard got together, and I think that we have a good understanding. I wanted the board to hear the issues that you had before you, and I think we can go forward and make some progress now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Our third speaker for public comment is Jennifer Platt, who is on Zoom. Jennifer?
Good evening.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I just had a couple of things that have been on my mind, and first of all, I want to welcome Jonathan to the town. I saw you from across the room at our EDC meeting last week, but I didn't get to personally walk over and welcome you. So I'm really excited to see you on board. Just a couple of very brief things that I've been thinking about, and I don't even know if they're actively on the radar of the commissioners, but kind of in the vein of the first speaker and talking about quality of life here in towns, since my background is in public health, is to ask you all to be thinking about what we can be doing for tree protection ordinances and incentives to keep tree cover. We know that the health benefits of an urban forest are really great, reducing temperatures, stormwater runoff, etc. So that's one thing, and as well as the large trees. We have a lot of beautiful big trees, and I don't know if there's any way we can have incentives to keep those around. The second thing came to mind as I was driving out of town one night recently, and I saw like this giant light cloud to my left, and I don't know if it was a ball field or what, but Pittsburgh has been long known for its dark skies. And I just wanted to urge you to think about, as we have more development, are we requiring lights to face down? And I only know enough to be dangerous, but I would like to do what we can to help keep the light pollution to a minimum as we grow. And that's it. It'll be short and sweet tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Oh, Jennifer, if you're still on, do we have your address so that we can note that for the minutes?
65 Harriet Watson Road, Pittsburgh.
Thank you. And now we are at the consent agenda. There are 5 items on the consent agenda consisting of minutes, budget amendments, and contract between the town of Pittsburgh for our annual audit. Is there a motion to approve these items by consent? Or is there any one that needs to be pulled from the agenda and separately scheduled?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by,
Madam Mayor, I have one thing on the minutes of May 17th that says elected town officials present. Mayor Pro-Tem is not there.
I fixed that.
Okay,
So she noted it absent.
right.
Yep.
No big deal to me, but
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, there it is.
it's a good meal, I know that. Yeah, really good.
That was good.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Commissioner Farrell, Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now we enter into our 2 public hearings that we have for this evening. Is there a motion to enter into public hearing for item 1, which is the fiscal year 2023-24 budget public hearing?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Bonitz,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. On this item, the town manager's proposed budget is before us. And so we will conduct the public hearing. There is nobody, is that correct? Nobody is signed up from the public with the town clerk, either on the sheet or by Zoom. So is there any introductory kinds of materials? Yes. Mr. Franklin.
All right, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
So I kind of have a knack of taking town manager positions a month before their budgets are due. So I think this is the third time. So I am pleased to present the hard work of the staffs, as I was only here a few weeks prior to a lot of this being put together, but pleased to present the fiscal year 23-24 budget. It is balanced and prepared in accordance with the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act. It reflects the town board and staff's commitment to providing high quality, low cost services. These services provide safe and secure neighborhoods that are fundamental to the quality of life and economic vitality of the town. Proposed budget for this 23-24, just over 16 million, 16.4 million roughly. That is with a total general fund budget just over 10 million, with a tax rate that remains at 44 cents per $100 of assessed value. 1 cent equates to just over $96,000, and the town's collection rate for the taxes is 97.5. Solid waste budget is 555,000 for this year. That includes a 5.5% increase due to inflation, and that is a pass through from our contract with GFL. And we are in the second year of a 2-year contract with GFL, at which time this board will need to decide how we move forward with that. Water and sewer budget's 6.3 million roughly. We do expect revenues to increase this year, and that includes a 2.5% increase to water and sewer rates due to inflation as well. The proposed budget includes a 5% COLA, and this is the personnel section. That is effective July 1. It also includes a 1% merit bonus. That is a change from the last budget that or you were shown or discussed. We were switching from MedCost to Blue Cross Blue Shield. This is a net savings to the town of about $60,000. It's also better healthcare coverage for our employees, and also looks to save those who have dependents a couple $100 a year. So we're looking forward to getting that going. With those savings, we were able to fund some programs that we otherwise did not have the ability to. Boys and Girls Club, for example. We then took the remainder of that and used that to pay for the 1% merit bonuses, which we're hoping to start some type of evaluation process later in this year. The proposed budget also includes 6 new positions: police detective, construction inspector, and engineer, a downtown maintenance worker. I think that is a new position that you had not previously heard about. Basically, it's going to be a maintenance person in the Parks and Rec department that will help maintain and clean up downtown, pick up trash, keep the weeds clean, do the landscaping, those types of things. Also, with Katie being able to have 3 people for maintenance, I think that's going to give us a better approach to keeping our parks looking as beautiful as we want them to. And a wastewater maintenance, park maintenance worker. That one was already included, and then a wastewater maintenance worker. The general fund balance right now is just over 6 million, with about 5.5 of that unassigned. It's a good number, about 50%. So that's where you want to be. We think that the current year that we're in, we're going to see an increase in fund balance from the current budget year that we're in. So that's good news. We've worked diligently over the last few years to increase fund balance related to our enterprise funds. Currently, you're looking at 5.6 million, but only 1.7 of that is unassigned. If we're talking merger, obviously we want to make sure we have plenty of cash in the bank to take care of our debt, to make that transition a lot easier. And I think we're really close to that number, as Heather has initiated or has discussed. Year end fund balance, we feel like that will increase in the current year that we're in. And this budget that you're looking at also has a 2.5% fund balance appropriation in it. So if all goes well next year, regardless of merger or not, we should be able to stack some money away for further improvements to the system. Your capital outlay is there, 1.65 million for general fund, which is essentially vehicles, mowers, park improvements. And then your enterprise is 841,000, which is a simple, Jordan Lake Partnership, new pumps, trucks, just your standard, capital outlay there. In summary, this was prepared with focus on the town's long-term financial stability, while allowing us to provide high-quality service at lowest possible cost. We're continuing to invest in our people. And I think that's the best way to get a lot of these things done, making sure we have a great staff and turning Pittsburgh into a preferred employer in Chatham County. With that, just want to thank everybody involved with the development of this document, and I submit the annual budget for your consideration and adoption. Sorry to talk so long. Yep.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the board? It was Commissioner Shipp's thought that we needed to have extra time for the public to react to and comment on the budget in its complexity and in just in light of the newness of all of us to the budget process. So do you have questions other than that?
Yeah, a couple questions
Okay.
and comments.
And so we'll pause at the end here after questions to simply continue the public hearing to the next meeting on June the 12th. And that way, leaving it open will allow public comment if need be, and will just be a more efficient way of dealing with the budget. So Commissioner Shipp, questions?
I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me is we say that the budget is our priorities or reflects our priorities. And I think particularly what we spend our money on in the budget reflects our priorities, but sidewalks and greenways doesn't have any money allocated for it now. And that's obviously a big priority of ours and a big priority of the public when we get that feedback from them, even on those surveys that we're able to do this year a little bit. So I'd like to see, how we can allocate some money for that. And I recognize that we're spending a lot on some deferred maintenance of parks and parks facilities, have last year and will this year. So I appreciate that, but I want to see how we can continue to particularly make connections of what we have, of the little bit of sidewalk we have to the little bit of greenway that we have, and fill in those connections with some money this year. So I'd like to see some allocated for that.
You mind? Oh, I can get a little more feedback from you. And Kent can add some color to this if he so chooses, but we've been getting a couple of grants from CMAC. We've got a couple of those going on. We're trying to finish those up. We had applied for some more funding for, I think, a sidewalk project on 87 under the carbon reduction program. We were not selected, but Chatham County was selected for an EV station project. So I think we can join them in that project. We're just going to have to provide the match. So that's something that we can look at as well. But I think the current Powellville funding looks like we can do 5 to 6 streets from our rating schedule, which is about half a mile. So if we want to pare that number down to 3 or 4 streets, then we can take the remainder and put that towards some sidewalk repair. So we can kind of work this out however y'all would like to see it.
I mean, personally, I would leave it up to staff in terms of repair or connections or things like that. But I just think it's something that we need to make continual progress towards in terms of improving walkability and connections throughout town.
Okay.
Roads too, obviously, so it's a give and take, of course. But.
Yep. So just kind of following on Johnson's update. So we also currently in the current budget year, the board approved funding for a sidewalk that we are in the design phases, and that will be completing, as you're saying, filling in gaps along Pittsburgh Elementary School Road. So that's in the design phases and will be bid for construction in the late summer, fall time. So that is, has been continuing our approach to kind of keep a steady, stream of projects working through primarily through the DOT grant program. However, we certainly in the future want to shift to also looking at some town funded sidewalk projects. Primarily that will be somewhat tied to our general fund growth. As Jonathan was saying, we certainly can use the Powell bill funding to do sidewalk construction. That's an eligible activity. We'll need to balance that with, you know, our street paving.
Sure.
Which with our street rating, our system is actually in a good shape. And we want to be able to continue that going forward. So.
And I was just kind of, I mean, I'm always surprised by the cost of sidewalk. Like, I think it was, 125,000 to fill in that piece near the retreat of Pittsburgh there. And I think it was about 50,000, although I think we had some federal help on the prep for the Rose and Creek Greenway. So I think, based on those factors, if they're real, if we can focus a little more on Greenway when we're shorter on money, maybe we'll get a little bang for our buck.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Jackson.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
For at least the last couple of years, certainly last year, we talked about the traffic control on Oakwood Drive. And I believe there are some speed tables that have been paid for by the town for that amount of time, 2 years or more. That we just not allocated the money to get them installed. Do we know if that's in the budget, or could it be part of the budget?
So
So we do not have that currently in the budget. I know it was discussed. I don't believe that the town committed to installing speed tables there.
Last year when I asked, Chris said we just needed to allocate the money to make it happen in next year's budget. That's
Okay.
what, that was my guidance last year.
Okay, so I mean, it wasn't brought up,
Certainly.
by any department in the,
Right.
for the budget. Yeah, so we don't have that allocated currently.
we purchased those last year, as I understand. The policy is based on the study results and all that. The policy is that the town would provide them, and then the neighborhood would pay for the installation of them. And so that's the last status of that, and that they weren't shown as needed by the study, but we would install them. We would provide them and install them if the neighborhood paid for them.
Yeah.
So that
Can we
was,
look into that further? I've had at least one I'm reading right now, just to make sure I got the details right. At least 2 people have reached out to me asking why they should have to pay for road repairs as a neighborhood inside the town. So maybe I'm asking that now also, respectfully.
Yeah, well, it's not a road repair. It's an addition, to the road. And so if the town, if a study deemed it not required, I believe that's up to the town to make that
Yeah.
decision.
Is this the neighborhood where like 75% said they wanted it?
Yes.
They jumped through a lot of hoops and then,
Yes.
yeah. So I think if we've already purchased them, I think we just go and install them.
so I don't disagree with that conceptually, but we need to update our traffic calming policy because that's not what it says. So, I think we need to work from a policy perspective so that when other locations ask for the similar thing, we have a, united stance on that.
Yeah, I think if you have that number of folks who are interested in traffic calming and we have the money and it's this board's will to do that kind of work, then we should. So we'll talk. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for either Heather Meacham or Jonathan Franklin?
We do have an affordable housing set aside. And I'm curious to hear board members' thoughts on that and also staff thoughts. If there are any.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just confirming that, we have a project fund for affordable housing, which we have set aside one penny for the last year, this year, and the upcoming year. As far as I'm aware, we haven't adopted any policies though in how to administer that money.
Yes. And can you confirm that that's somewhere around 85,000 accumulated over each of the 2 last years?
No, so it was, this year we're putting 96,000 in there.
It's
Be like 170.
And so it's probably getting close to 200,000 total.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think with this year, it would be 260,000 or 70,000 or something.
Yeah, with the 96, it's going to be, because we had 96 and then for the current year, 85. And then in the year prior, 75, yeah.
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 So I think that, I think we've done a lot of good steps towards affordable housing UDO incentives that, may or may not work. And I think we have some risk there that we've talked about, with some of the things we have in there now. And then also, Chatham Park has their agreed upon requirements for affordable housing now, but I think, and from based on AHAC and the amount of money, about 200,000 a year is what we've traditionally had for AHAC. And that goes, it stretches less than we would like to in terms of, creating affordable housing. So I think it's good to be putting that away and to start thinking about that, particularly as we have, potential, neighborhoods paying into that, larger numbers in the future. But, I would like to see, I would be interested. It is something we need to work on of a policy around that. And I think maybe something we can look at a little more creative uses for it, or, in my opinion, a greenway connecting a neighborhood to an employment center is going to make it more affordable if it's easier to transit there. So, transportation is a large part of affordable housing. Transportation around town, we talk about a trolley or things like that. And I even think that employees, if we can incentivize employees to live in town or subsidize employees to live in town, some of those things can make the money that we have go a lot further than, potentially direct subsidies and things of a number of units. So I'm very interested in looking at those things, but I guess with the caution of that's not as much money as we hope it would be towards the large cost of affordable, subsidizing housing to make it affordable.
Mhm. So, Commissioner Shipp, did you have thoughts on other creative ideas, like perhaps, I think Mr. Angina mentioned
Quick approvals, hand holding, local money, waiving permit fees,
Density bonus.
connection fees, and then tax abatement.
yeah, connection fees.
Not density bonus. So, he said it doesn't help.
He said it didn't help.
Doesn't help. Parking minimum, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that didn't help was density bonuses and reduction of parking.
Parking minimums, yeah.
Thank you.
Parking, parking minimums. So I think, the majority of those things are in our incentive policy, I think with the exception of any type of relief for property tax, which we have that placeholder in there, but we didn't put it in based on guidance. So I think in the case of that development, that our incentives in our UDO came after that development. And Richard actually worked on that committee, I think. So,
Right.
but going forward, I think those are valid things. And we have those incentives in our UDO right now. So if someone said, I want to build an affordable housing project, this many units, we're actually probably obligated to spend that money on those things. So I think there's some type of sort of reserve that we need to maintain there for when a project submits, and we've obligated ourselves to do some of these fee reductions and things like that.
Okay, and so utility connection fees, we can't legally waive them, but I am curious what we can do,
This project fund is money that is coming from general fund. And so you can use that to pay the enterprise fund, the system development fees. So you're not waiving the fee. This fund is paying the fee for the developer.
Okay.
Or a tap fee or some other. fee
Right, yeah.
That would be involved.
So the enterprise fund has to be made whole.
Understood, yeah. And so how do we go about initiating that?
Is essentially having a policy with criteria for what qualifies them to get that fee waived.
Okay. And so I understand that the Habitat for Humanity project's been, I've heard of it as many as a dozen, but many more, maybe 20 or something, units.
It was 18.
18,
Is what that
somewhere in
was.
there. Thank you. Can this board initiate action to create vouchers or to make payment of the connection fees for that development to help it once Habitat for Humanity is ready to build them?
Yeah, I think the first step, because I'm not aware that we have a policy that actually states the criteria for which a program would qualify for
Mhm.
waiving the fee. So we'd have to create and adopt a policy.
We have that in the
Okay.
UDO.
Okay.
So,
I think the major issue is we don't have capacity.
right.
So moving forward with any discussion about how we do this stops at the moment,
Mhm.
we discussed the capacity issue. So until we have that, because some of these SDFs, I think in what Paul and I were discussing is they have to be used in a certain amount of time. And so we have an idea what that timeline is, but until we know for sure what it is, you're kind of just discussing theory rather than something that's practical. But I think since we've got the strategic framework coming up, I think this gives the board an opportunity to state that affordable housing is one of your number one goals, and then let staff go and work out those details and provide you an actionable plan that with input from other stakeholders, we can figure out what is going to work. I think Richard gave us a couple of options here that we can look into.
And John, I apologize. I kind of understand now your prompt that you were working on there from that idea before, but so yeah, I mean, I think that's something we've already obligated ourselves to pay SDFs for affordable housing projects. And I think our challenge now is to figure out how we will do that when someone brings an affordable housing project and what our SDFs are. So.
Okay.
Are there further questions for Heather Meacham or Jonathan Franklin?
I think this is kind of an operational question, but I noted the yard waste tipping fee of 0. And I think that's because the county lets us bring it to them for free. Is that correct?
That's just that line. I don't know. That was created by somebody prior to me. I've never budgeted anything in that line.
Okay.
So if we pick up something from a customer, we just put it into our garbage at the shop. And that's something that we are billed for by GFL.
Oh, okay. I thought we were taking yard waste to the county
No,
land.
I don't know. I don't believe
Okay.
so.
no, they haul it off from a roll-off dumpster.
Yeah.
So that dumps inert debris into a roll-off dumpster, which is hauled by GFL.
Okay. So we're separating yard waste.
I'm not positive.
Well, I guess when I get into those details, I guess, but my question is, because it's been a question with the GFL contract previously, is if there's a way that we can track what we're spending on yard waste pickup. I don't know how easy or hard that is operation. I mean, if we have a dumpster that, if we have a roll off that we're using only for yard waste, then I guess we could, see what that is. But I don't know how easy it is to track down to lower levels of, our workers that are driving around and picking up that yard waste and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we have gotten better about opening work orders for pickups, but a work order doesn't get opened up for necessarily every pickup.
Mhm.
So, because sometimes if they see something, they will just pick it up.
Sounds like a great opportunity for Mr. Snipes when he gets here
There we go.
on June 12th.
Exactly. All right.
All right. Anything further?
Well, I'll just second that suggestion. Thank you, Commissioner Shipp, because in our prior conversations about yard waste and paying for a new aspect to the contract for GFL to handle yard waste from a third bin, my concern, and I've not always voiced this, but it has always been a concern in the back of my mind, is that we don't want to incentivize people to collect stuff that can go back to the soil put that out on the curb and have it hauled with all the diesel fuel incumbent upon that. I believe that we want to encourage people to keep their leaves on their land. Keep their small brush on their property and stuff that they are unable to manage be hauled off. But I'd very much like to see us have a composting policy or some means of encouraging source reduction of yard waste. So by accounting for costs of that collection, we can help to begin to understand what the benefits might be to the town to actually encouraging folks to compost. So, thank you.
I just wanted to detail a couple of additional changes that were made to the budget. Since the version that we talked about at the budget retreat, we increased code enforcement from 25,000 to 65,000 so that we can increase the number of days and the number of hours a week that the code enforcement is working. We moved funds that were under the downtown department for rain garden maintenance that was moved into the parks fund. And then we did have to increase the insurance premium under admin, and that's because the finance director is now required per statute to have a much higher insurance policy for fraud. So we will be having a new policy for that with the new fiscal year. And if you have any other questions, please let me know.
I guess with the rain garden maintenance specifically, and then adding the position for downtown maintenance, is there?
Yeah,
overlap
so
now?
we reduced the amount of that was allocated, but we still added an amount to the parks budget for materials and supplies for the maintenance.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but the intention is that that person will be doing the maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, I have just a couple of things. The Main Street facade improvements, I see we went from 15 to 50. Are we still under the 3,500 max per facade?
Yes, so what we did is we're adding some additional sort of differentiations between, so we put I believe we have 30,000 under the regular facade grant program. Then we put 10,000 under mural facade grants. And then we're looking at doing 10,000 for building grants, meaning for other building improvements, not necessarily the facade. So, but we have to work on policy procedures for those items.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
It's my understanding that the facade grant will go up to 5,000, and that will come to you all in the near future. I think they're rewriting that policy.
So 5,000 from match from us?
Yeah, it'd be 50-50 match. So $10,000 project, 5 match.
Yeah.
And that's pretty standard across Main Street communities. And with the cost of building stuff going up, it makes sense.
On the capital improvement, I see we have the tennis courts, but I don't see the basketball courts. Are they not in this?
Yes, it should be.
There.
It should be there.
Uh,
We put 200.
I don't see it.
Yeah, $200,000.
Oh, is that in the CIP? Is that in the CIP section? Okay, if I left it off, I will put it in there, but
It's
it
in
is, but it is
budget.
in the budget.
It's 200 in each one of them.
Yep.
Yes, yes, I will make sure that I fix that for the next meeting.
Okay, and this has 325 for the tennis court.
That's because we currently have money budgeted this year
Oh, okay.
in that project fund. So there will be a total of 325 for the tennis courts because that price came in significantly higher than expected.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Or are we ready for a motion to continue the public hearing until June 12th?
I'll move for continuance of the public hearing till June 12th.
Motion by Commissioner Bonitz,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries unanimously to continue that public hearing. Next, then, we need a motion to enter public hearing for UDO text amendments, itemized as item number 2 under public hearing tonight. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries unanimously, and Janie Phelps will be leading us in the conduct of the public hearing and approval of text amendments to the UDO.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and hello, Commissioners. So just wanted to go over to make sure everything was clear in the submittal. I included the packet that was sent to the planning board, so you could all see what went to them, but in some conversations with our attorney and also going over the text amendments again, I made some minor changes after that meeting because the planning board adopted the packet as submitted and not with any amended changes. So I'll briefly go over them. The first one is to remove the reference to the county environmental health department because they don't look at the installation of our lines. And then the change to 6.5.2.f was something that has been in our system for a while, and I was just now getting to it to amend it from saying that if lots cannot be economically to just due to lack of capacity. 10.3.2, currently pre-submittal meetings are a requirement. And we went from actually having those pre-scheduled weekly through Zoom because it involves county departments. And there wasn't a very high attendance. It's just really difficult for us to get everyone together because the county departments do inspections for the entire county, including Siler City in our jurisdiction. To just doing those through email. And even that has posed some issues too. And our applicants aren't getting all the information at the time. And so instead of making it a requirement, we're making it recommended. Some more clarification on the community information meeting, just to make sure that, yes.
Stop for just a second.
I don't know if you want comments in between or if you want to run through it. I don't have a preference.
Almost done.
Okay.
I'll go back. So for the community information meeting, it's just clarifying the acceptable proof of postage so that we can make sure that the letters are sent out on with enough time that we have listed out. And then also we are amending the zoning map review standards. Currently there's 10 of them to be answered, and that's a lot. So since we've had the land use plan updated, I went ahead and modified them so that our applicants will actually go to that document because they'll pull references from there. They've had to anyways, but this just clarifies certain sections that they can reference so it can support their document and for you all to be able to go there directly as well. And then we're not adding a section for downzoning that's actually covered by statute. So that is just currently it's listed as a finding. So that's why I was pulling it out. But then in talking with the attorney, it's covered by 160D. So we don't need it at all in there. And that's all that I have proposed.
Commissioner Shipp, did you have questions?
Yes. So for I guess we'll go back up, the downzoning, you're saying to add the section on downzoning, but you're.
So it was included. We have this list of findings in our UDO and downzoning was number 11, but it's not really a finding. So I was going to pull that out. And when I sent it to our attorney, he said, you don't even need to cover it. It's redundant pretty much because it's covered by statute. So we're just removing that section on downzoning. I have it.
Number 6 says add downzoning.
Yes, that's why I said I was going to clarify. I gave you what I gave the planning board because that's what the planning board approved. And that's why I have this attachment A, because that's something that the town attorney and I had discussions on. And there were some changes that staff still wanted to propose because the planning board approved the document as submitted.
Okay. Did the planning board have any comments?
No.
on anything? Okay. Okay, I see that now. And then, so on the pre-submittal meeting, I don't want to just remove it because it's hard. If it's something that we need, or if we need more support from the county. So that's one thing. If it's beneficial, I think we should do it however we can. And then also in terms of affordable housing, that's where we've often talked about on the county affordable housing committee and on this board that, you know, we have these incentives for affordable housing. So the pre-submittal meeting might be our earliest opportunity to talk about things like green incentives when we add those, or affordable housing incentives and things like that. The further the applicant gets along in the project, the harder it is to change things to put those in. So I think that the pre-submittal meeting is important for those reasons and maybe other reasons. I don't know that it has to be a meeting on Zoom. It might be a packet that we send out or something like that, but I'm hesitant to make the earliest contact optional.
So I've worked in a couple of other jurisdictions and it's never been a requirement. It's a recommendation. So as staff, we can say, hey, go ahead and fill out this application form and send it back to us, and we're going to get you this information. So it's not, right now it's a requirement. And for a lot of the projects that we have coming in, it's just an extra step that takes up time, and it doesn't make much of a difference. But there have been plenty of times, and staff is well versed enough to realize, hey, this should really have a pre-submittal meeting and we should have that information, or at least we should try and seek that information for them. And there have been times where some county staff, I've sent the pre-submittal forms and they've actually asked to have a meeting. And so there have been very few occasions where we've actually set up an additional meeting to talk about projects. But the majority of these, we don't, it doesn't make sense to have them required. And it should be up to staff to assess the project and the scope of what's going on, and we can make that determination.
The meeting would be for the benefit of the applicant, not the town. So it would be to the applicant's benefit to ask for the pre-submittal meeting so that he can know what the rules are. If he thinks he knows what the rules are, he takes his chances.
Okay.
You're creating a burden on the staff to require it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of that, which I'm not interested in doing necessarily, but I think that part of it is letting them know about things they might not know about that we want them to do or to be able to take advantage of. And so I don't know too, we could define what that is, if if it's a project over X, or if it's this type of project. So I don't know if I don't know. I'm fine with staff's recommendation. I'm just curious about it. So I'll leave it at that. And then for the lack of, for the in-town septic systems, the lack of capacity, that would come to the Board of Commissioners to make that determination. Is
That's
that
something we're still going through with in the UDO. It's not super clear, and the attorney and I have been discussing back and forth. It's been held off for a little bit now because of the discussions, ongoing with Sanford. So we're still discussing that, but I know that this was a change that's been in the queue since before I even started, to remove the word economically and replace it with due to lack of capacity.
I guess I'm okay with that as long as it says in the opinion of the Board of Commissioners. That means that it would come to us for a vote, correct?
Yeah, that's still proposed to stay.
Okay. So I don't. All right.
All right, further questions for Janie Phelps? Commissioner Farrell, you were sighing. I wasn't sure if that was
I mean,
an intro to a question. All right. Let's note at this time that there have been no public signups for this public hearing.
That is correct.
So is there if there are no further questions, is there a motion for the adoption of these text amendments? Let's see, we need to come out of public hearing before that motion.
I'll move, we close the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Bonitz,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And is there a motion to adopt the text amendments that have been under discussion?
Well, a couple of these that are in here are not, you're not asking them to approve them, right?
So I put together the ordinance already. And it's at the end for the ordinance for adopting, and that has the wrong ZTA number, but everything else in there is correct. So I'll have to amend that, but the proposed text amendments are Exhibit B in the ordinance for approval.
Well, speak as concerned with that.
Is that to the understanding of the commissioners who made the motion and the second?
I think the motion, the second was to close the public hearing, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So there hasn't been a motion yet as far as the business at hand. I would ask that you table this to the second meeting in June, so we can look at this, because Paul brought up a good point about something that I want to dive into a little deeper.
Okay,
Yeah, my apologies, but I'd like you to table this.
all right.
I'll make a motion to table to the second meeting in June.
Second.
Can I add a quick comment? Is there just one part to table? Can we adopt some of them? Or do you want to look at all of them?
All of them.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay, all right.
Still getting used to being here.
So we do have a motion on the table now. Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Commissioner Bonitz, to table the text amendments to the second meeting in June.
And I think due to general statute, you need to say the specific date, which would be June 26th.
June
Okay.
26th.
Modify my motion to June 26th.
All right. Modification by the second. Yes, and those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Next is old business. Kent Jackson will hear from you with respect to the Department of Transportation Prioritization Project List.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening again. So I asked Colby if he can display the list of projects for the public, please. Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. So every 2 years, NCDOT has a prioritization process that asks the local jurisdictions to provide recommendations or list of recommended projects. We, of course, are a member of the Triangle Area Rural Planning Organization, which is the umbrella organization that we participate in with Siler City and Chatham County. So recently, our three entities, our staffs, had a series of meetings to develop our individual and our collective list to submit to DOT. Our request tonight is to ask the board's consideration of a resolution endorsing the list of highway and bike and ped projects for prioritization 7.0 to kind of set the timeframes. So coming up on June 8th is our next technical coordinating committee meeting of TARPO, which is when this draft list will be reviewed for further consideration. Immediately following that, there will be a 30-day public comment period beginning on June 12th through July 11th. And then the final project list is to be approved by the TAC on its meeting of August 10th. So that kind of sets the time frame. So this is a list of highway and bike and ped projects that has been vetted by staff and recommended for your consideration. I will point out that our list contains the one rollover project, which is the NC 87 project, and then 5 new projects that would be part of this recommendation. 2 of those highway projects and 4 of those being bike and ped projects. For the highway projects, those projects that are programmed are paid for in full by the NCDOT state and federal funding. For bike and ped projects, those projects are subject to matching from the local jurisdictions, typically 20% match. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And Morgan is online as well. She has been our representative recently for this process.
Excellent. Thank you, Morgan. And are there, I know we're all celebrating the rollover of 87 from 902 to the 64 bypass. Talked about that many times. So, and I note on the Thompson Street project for bike and ped, the pedestrian path, which is certainly going to be needed. But I get probably weekly inquiries from members of the community who are on the Pittsburgh side of Thompson Street, not past the DOT Pittsburgh line of demarcation, about when Thompson Street will be under review and improvement, given the large amount of traffic that's going to be on that road due to Chatham Park.
And certainly, as you astutely pointed out, part of a portion of Thompson Street is our town street, and then the remainder is the NCDOT street. And certainly we could evaluate moving forward either in parallel with this request, or we could just move forward based on this request. However, obviously, if we move forward independently, we would be absorbing the entire cost, whereas we stand to have 80% of that funded through state and federal dollars through this approach. But certainly a definite need, as reflected in it being on this list. Providing that kind of long needed and thought of connection between the new development at Chatham Park and the downtown area.
Well, I guess one of the things that's on my mind is if Thompson Street is going to be expanded, we would hate to have a fairly new 10-foot multi-use pedestrian path and then have the structure of Thompson Street expand to the point where it doesn't serve the original purpose. So I guess I'm wondering if the expansion of the street needs to happen first and then, or in conjunction with the pedestrian pathway, but I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, because these projects aren't funded, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So I think if this project were to get funded, then we could look at a project enhancement where we join on with DOT and then we look at what that could entail.
And you talked about the kind of short-term timeline of this. Do you have any indication of the longer-term timeline of, if these were to be funded, when we would see, cats out there working?
That may be something, Morgan, if you were on, if you could maybe speak to that since you've been more recently involved with the schedules.
Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah, so the P7 prioritization goes, I believe, up till 2034. So it's kind of hard to project when it would get funded. I think a lot of it is just how the projects score when they get put into the process. But I think at the earliest, it would probably be 2029, and at the latest, it would be 2034.
Just wanted to have expectations. About
Yeah, it's a slow process.
Yep. Did either of you have any update on the redesignation of 15501? I think that's going to be voted in the spring, but I don't know.
We have had some along the way. Morgan, the most recent from the division on the truck route schedule.
I believe the ASHTO was meeting in May. I'm not sure of the exact date, but I have had some communication with Division 8 Traffic Services just about starting the process of the signing and what kind of signage that the town is going to be looking for, assuming approval from ASHTO, but we haven't gotten a definite date yet. But I think they're expecting some signage to be put up maybe early fall, late summer, early fall. So it should be happening relatively soon.
Yeah, that's what I thought I remembered. And then but I guess my question related to that is, these projects refer to 15501 Divine Parkway, which I think is actually Fire Tower Road. I think we have Greenway to combine to Fire Tower, but or 15501 at 64 Business, 155, so like if or when 15501 is redesignated, is that going to affect prioritization of these projects or the terminology in this list?
My best understanding, that will not have an impact for these particular type projects.
Okay, so over time it may change, we might say Sanford Road instead of 15501, but it wouldn't change the underlying score or priority.
Right.
Okay.
I will point out an interesting this feature of the program as it relates to the NC 87 modernization. So at the point that project is funded, there will be an automatic process that begins to do the complete streets evaluation. That will not be a separate request and timing that we have to make.
Okay.
Further questions on this proposal?
Yes. Ken, I just have to tell you how happy I am to see this. I really appreciate your taking initiative on this. I'm just tickled to see 5961 mentioned again, continued attention to that. That's great. I think I've asked before, and I'll just keep asking. Part B to my question is, do intersection improvements specifically for 5961 include sidewalks, multi-use paths, signals, crosswalks over West Street? Morgan, can you speak to that as you're the commissioner's question?
I did, and yes, it does include that. We actually propose intersection improvements as part of our new list at 64 Business and NC 87, but Tarpo advised upon that request that we could not submit that because that would be automatically included with the R5961 rollover project. So as part of that modernization, it will be complete analysis of the intersection with improvements with signal timing, any widening that's necessary, and pedestrian improvements.
Terrific, Morgan. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to hear that. And thank you also, I didn't mean to omit you from thanks for your work on this. Part A to my question there. I'd really like to drill into this 5961 project because I think as I've heard over the years, it has maybe even got dropped off the list because of the cost of the project. And I continue to scratch my head as to why it is that it's conceived to be such a large project. It really seems to me that we might consider shortening the project or breaking it into two pieces from 902 to West Street as one piece and basically south of East Street and then north of East Street as a second piece. The reason for that is that I just don't see the urgency of modernizing that northern section. I think the vast majority of truck traffic is going to be turning at Al's Diner and heading south. And I'd be happy to see DOT's data to prove me wrong. I know that there are tractor trailers that go north of East Street down 87, Goldston Road, and up to Alamance County. But I'm most concerned about that section from Al's Diner south. And I think that if we could break it up, it might improve our scoring.
I mean, to the point of how it impacts the scoring, I would need to do, some further investigation into that. I mean, I can agree logically from just a character of the facility. Certainly there is, merits to your point. Potentially the break point is more suitable at the roundabout at the community college library area, but certainly somewhere in there is a change in the characteristic of the street. So, but to your further point about making it a, part A and part B or something like that, we'd have to do some further, investigating of that option.
Thank you.
And what the impacts might be.
Thank you. Then scrolling down in your memo, thinking about actually what Mayor raised, I'm curious about that item Thompson Street from US 15501 Divine Parkway. Can we reconceive of that as being on East Street instead, which would align with a project that was conceived in the bike ped plan as a quote unquote linear park? It's on page 20 of our bike ped plan, item 50. Potential linear park idea to connect into downtown Pittsburgh as well as through the current town hall property to the Chatham Park Greenway side path system. This project could be branded as a major trail from the heart of downtown Pittsburgh through the heart of Chatham Park Village Center with connectivity potential to the Hall River Bynum and beyond. What that project envisions is utilizing the very significant right-of-way on old Highway 64 East Street. On the north side of the street, there's an awful lot of right-of-way that most of the businesses have stood off of. There's an auto repair place that has intruded upon that, probably because they just didn't realize they ought not. I think it'd be really great if we could, instead of imposing upon those very close street frontages on Thompson Street, some of the houses are so really quite close to the street. Instead, we could come down Martin Luther King Jr. Drive or down the undevelopable land behind Town Hall. That's kind of a green space, if you will. Right now, it's an impenetrable mess of down oak trees and vines. But anyway, I think there's a way to envision
a 10-foot multi-use pedestrian path that wouldn't impose on people's front yards in Thompson.
Right. So again, I think your observation is a very logical one. I mean, it's my thought that as long as the point A and point B remain the same, we have some flexibility in the route.
Okay.
Morgan, have you learned anything in the process that would make that different, or would we have flexibility on the actual route?
I'm not really sure what flexibility we would have, but I can definitely ask and find out.
Yeah, so maybe before we get too far down the path, if simply changing that phrase, route Thompson Street to, I don't know, route to be determined, or route East Street. Yeah, that'd be great. Another question.
So that would essentially be describing more of, what might be considered a strollway type of concept, as opposed to a direct, as you described, a path that somewhat meanders between sidewalk and greenway.
Yes,
potentially.
I think it would need to take advantage of a lot of different types of spaces to make its way from Vine. What's it called? Vine Parkway. To downtown.
Sure.
And it may not make it all the way to downtown off street. I think that there's sufficient right of way on grass and side of the road to get much of the way, perhaps all the way to Main Street Station. And then around Main Street Station, it may need to be on the surface of the road. But
I mean, my question or comment there about that is, I think Thompson Street would have better connectivity with the approved improvements coming down 15501 or Hillsborough Street. I think there's a better connection there. We have the connection going in at Vine Parkway or Fire Tower Road there. And then as the mayor said, the majority of our comments are about speed and kind of pedestrian interaction on Thompson Street. So to me, this directly addresses those. And I think that a complete project to make those connections would be good. And I'd be, kind of concerned, I guess, about one that transitions down to the road through downtown. This is almost, we know that it's essentially a bypass of downtown now for vehicles. This would kind of complete that for pedestrians as well. Not in favor of that idea that's described in the bike and bed plan, but I think that this, as described here, does a better job of connecting what we will have in a few years and what we already have, and addresses concerns about Thompson Street and the sidewalk and how close it is to the road and things like that. I'm also just curious more generally with this saying, Tarpo Advisory Committee on June 8th, how much flexibility do we have on this item? If we don't approve this list tonight, what are our options on June 8th?
Morgan, can you talk about your understanding of what's going to happen on June 8th and how, I guess, binding or final that might be?
From my understanding, the TAC meeting on June 8th, they expect to have a complete draft list for them to review. And at that point, they'll decide how they want to move forward and whatever changes they have in preparation to start the 30-day public comment period. I think it would be ideal for us to have our list finalized prior to that meeting.
I just want to say that my experience with Tarpo has not invited any opportunity for feedback from us. It has been them telling us what is going to happen, dead stop. That's frustrating.
So this list was provided from Tarpo, or did we have input on it?
The list was developed between our staff from Siler City and staff from Chatham County.
Okay.
So it is a staff developed list.
Okay. And I guess my only a small comment on the descriptions of them is there's a little more flavor in the Siler City descriptions of the projects. Improve pedestrian connectivity between Siler City, the Mount Air facility. So I don't know if that improvement type column or description column matters in the process, but we might be able to enhance that a little bit before it goes forward. But I don't know what the factors are.
So you're thinking of just adding more descriptive definitions in the improvement type? Is that
Yes,
essentially your comment?
yes. But I don't know if that is a factor or not.
I think there's a somewhat back to Commissioner Vose's comment. I think there's a certain part of this that where the jargon matters as far as, efficiency and clear communication to NCDOT. I think within that boundary, we have some flexibility as far as, what we add to that.
An example is, this would fill in Siler, this would fill a gap in the town sidewalk network by connecting the downtown area to the 64 corridor and would connect the largest employment center in the town, Mount Air Farms. So that sounds a little better if you're looking at the list. And I think we're doing many of the same things, but can maybe describe it better.
Okay. I'm completely certain that we have flexibility within, a similar description that another, town has used.
Yeah.
So.
So a final question from me is the inclusion of signalized pedestrian crossings. And if I guess I'm curious if this is just too much of an intrusion, but can we include an additional request? Again, something that's documented in the bike ped plan for signalized crossings on West Street. So the issue is, and this is the only one that I've had a citizen write to me about repeatedly, is parents of students at Pittsburgh Elementary feel it's unsafe to walk their kids to school from the north side of West Street to the school. And the suggestion was to have signalized crossings either at 87 or farther down at McClenahan, because there's already a sidewalk right there next to the sheriff's department. I believe that's recognized on page 18 of the bike ped plan, items 24 and 31.
So I think your request might be to add to this description to say signalized pedestrian crossing along with that description for the NC 87 project is one part of your request.
It could go there. If I wrote this down, Morgan, forgive me, your assurance of earlier may take care of this question, but it seems like it might be cheaper and easier to put it at McClenahan. But that then again would be a totally separate project, I guess.
I think that's correct. I think that would be outside the parameters or corridor for this particular request, and we would need to pursue that through some other, perhaps, local project with our local NCDOT, a smaller program. Would be my thought on that one.
Okay. I'm looking at the pedestrian crossings at
two intersections there over 15501 Chatham Street, Pittsburgh Elementary Street. It just made me think about that need for north-south connectivity, pedestrian connectivity across West Street. I mean, certainly if we are able, if it does not impact, a sensitive definition or so forth with NCDOT, we're happy to add in that description, signalized pedestrian crossing at West Street and 87. Okay, Morgan, is that included in that language, intersection improvements? Or is it implicit?
Yeah, so the intersection improvements at 87 and 64 business, we can't submit separately because it's included in the R5961. I do think there's a possibility that we could maybe include McClanahan in with the other US 64 business signalized pedestrian crossings that we already have, which we have 2 intersections now, but we may be able to add that one to that item. I can check with our TARPO representative to confirm that.
Thank you.
Further concerns, questions? Can I just ask an errant question that does not directly apply to these? I think all of us were a bit taken aback when DOT came in and put out the stakes for the section from Lawrence Street to Lowe's Home Improvement, where the third lane is going to be added and the sidewalk and the multi-use paths will be constructed on either side. And the intrusion into people's yards, sometimes coming almost up to their doorway. I'm wondering what those stakes, are those stakes boundaries? Are those stakes pavement? Are those stakes the extent of the multi-use path? They look like they encroach just incredibly severely into the community property.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the first part of your question, and we are continuously working with NCDOT to try and better understand their procedures for how they execute those type of projects, specifically the timing. I mean, what is typical and what has happened in this particular case. They have a public open house meeting on the very front end of the project when it's maybe not as meaningful to the property owners along the route. And then there's not a subsequent process, at a more appropriate time, maybe just ahead of the staking that we've seen, to come in and remind or have more individual engagement with the property owner. So noted there, we share your concern and are working to try and recover that as much as we can, being a partner agency. To some of the specifics, I'd like to ask Morgan to talk about some of the specifics about the staking, because she's done quite a bit of work in the past couple of weeks to learn more about that. So Morgan.
To my benefit, she's been researching this for 2 weeks because I had the same questions, and Commissioner Baldwin as well.
Sure. So the stakes can mean several different things. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the property that's going to be acquired by the NCDOT for the project. It could be a variety of easements. There's temporary drainage easements, temporary utility easements. It just depends on what type of work they're needing for the project. Most of these are temporary easements that once construction is underway and completed, and they may be existent for 2 to 3 years. And at that point, those easements will go away once construction is complete. So NCDOT and their primary consultant, Atkins, they will be reaching out to all the property owners individually about those stakes and about what they represent. And what type of easements that go with those. So if any property owners are affected by these and they haven't heard from anyone yet, then they will be very soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do remember that project, those maps showed various impacts very close to certain properties. And that they were hopeful to not require the taking of any houses and buildings. In the end, I think there was some question about that very small white brick building
Duplex, yeah.
duplex
Yeah.
that might be taken. But I was assured that the closest lines encroaching on people's property were going to be for things like grade change, where a little bit of a farther reach would be needed just to make things smooth. And then I think just construction easements so that they can turn vehicles around, I guess.
Right, and we have confirmed the one acquisition is the white residential structure you talked about.
And that's noteworthy to me. That's two units of affordable housing gone. So, not that we could keep it from happening. I mean, staff's hard work on getting that turn lane in the center narrowed to 12 instead of 16 feet was a big help in that direction. I'm sure. Sure. So, thank you.
So what is the pleasure of the board on this resolution to endorse the Tarco project list?
Just had a comment, should we go ahead and approve this resolution? Would we not want to, maybe one of these projects you put back? Anything we can amend or anything on this later, right? That question.
I mean, I think what seems appropriate would be to add any changes to your motion, and, you know, staff would certainly make sure those things are incorporated.
Add to it, but say yes.
What's that?
Add to it, but say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the addition that I would make would be, as we've discussed, McClenahan Crossing being added to the final bike and pedestrian item. And the first bike and pedestrian item being slightly added to somehow reflect the discussion we've had here, that it could be Thompson Street, it could be Thompson and East Street.
Then Thompson and East Street.
Yeah, in order to make use of the very rights of way along East Street. And not imposing upon people's properties along Thompson Street.
I'd be concerned about doubling the project for scoring purposes. So I guess in that case, I'm in favor of leaving it as is or changing it to East Street, but I don't think we should combine them necessarily. I think that'll hurt our scoring to double the length of the requests.
Not doubling the length. It's
Going from one street to another with the pedestrian pathway, not doing it on both streets.
Okay.
It already has sidewalk connectivity anyway. I mean, I think you make a good point about
Thompson
bringing.
has sidewalks, I guess.
And then coming across
So does East.
over to it.
Or portion of it.
Yeah,
The sidewalks are too narrow, so a perpetual concern.
they are narrow.
And the section of East Street that is discussed in the bike ped plan is this linear park. Has abundant right of way on the north side of East Street. Because a long time ago, NCDOT thought that highway, old 64 through town, is going to be wide. And so that very wide right of way could abundantly accommodate a 10-foot multi-use pedestrian path, plus exercise stations and benches and rest areas and art installations. And I mean, there's just so much space there. A lot could be done. It's, to me, I'm just wondering why we wouldn't cut into people's land on Thompson Street with varied houses that are quite close to the street, when we have just 2 blocks to the south.
You have 2 parallel roads over, come down and then swing in.
Thank you, a corridor that is welcoming such a project.
I was misunderstanding what you're saying about the notes, but
Okay. I think there's some tricks to it, whether or not it would come down Martin Luther King Jr. Drive or the backside of Town Hall. Or some other north-south connector, but I mean, I think my suggestion is to articulate it, as much as you can, the way that you would like to see it fashioned. Staff will carry that forward. If there is discussion or a need for a revision, I think there is time in the schedule beyond June 8th that we could make tweaks and bring it back to the board.
Well, John Bonitz, what is your thought about separating the 5961 project to
Yes.
To bring it? I like very much, Kent Jackson, your suggestion that it come up to the traffic circle rather than stop at Al's Diner. I mean, is that separation or division going to make it more palatable to get funding from DOT?
Morgan, do you have any insights on the question? Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. And I'm not sure how it would score. But I could follow up with Tarpo on that. I know it's a very complex system with how they score their projects, and I'm not familiar with all the specifics that they look at, but that's something that we can look into.
It might would affect our truck route if we didn't go all the way to 64.
I think, I mean, it would likely be designated a truck route in the next few months here. So I mean, I think having it designated as a truck route might improve our chances on these projects. But yeah, I don't know how it works with splitting a rollover project or how that decision is made. I think this is a good example of when we talk about workshop items and regular meeting items, but it's aside.
So the possibility of splitting that 5961 project, and then the sort of fleshing out more improvement type of language in the bike ped sections. And making note of the idea that the route for walking to school could come through McClanahan on the third one. Those would all be things that the board would be interested in tweaking by staff, but also understanding that we have a commitment to be able to provide this list by June 8th.
So Morgan, is our list limited to the 6 entries or 6 project considerations?
No, we definitely have some flexibility. We're just kind of tied to the number of projects that we have. But we have been told that we can combine pedestrian crossings as we did for the last 2 items on the list. So I really don't think it would be an issue to add McClanahan in, since they already gave us confirmation that we can do that. And I will check on the R5961. And just so staff knows how the board wishes to move forward with that. If we do have the opportunity to split that and it would affect the scoring, is that something you would want to move forward with if it could potentially make it score lower?
If it would score higher, I think we definitely want to split it. I don't see a benefit to splitting it if it lowers our score, but I do have to interject a cynical question about their black box methodologies and in scoring and I'm just thinking about other cases I've heard of where projects were divided into and thus scored better. I think the Hillsborough Street project was cut in two. I think Chatham Parkway, north and south, was originally one project and cut in two. So I'm feeling more and more my instinct on that one is to recommend to leave it and not make the attempt to have a and B project. My instinct is DOT is likely to say one of those is a new project and would be, it may subject the whole project to reprioritization or rescoring. I think it's an excellent consideration. I think the timing though may be more suited for the next prioritization cycle, which would roll around in 2 years. So that's kind of my instinct on that particular item. Can we still, with respect to your instincts, can we still ask the question? Sure. Yeah, we can certainly confirm that. Sure.
Is the board open to a special meeting if that would be needed, or are we going to approve it conditionally with staff input, especially as to the answer to those various questions we've just asked?
The discussion so far. Unless there are outstanding questions that staff don't feel you can answer. I mean, my response to that would be to go with the amended resolution approach or the kind of conditional resolution approach. I think the answers we're going to get from DOT are going to be, fairly quick and fairly definitive. To the point that we quickly be able to rule out or in an option and save a special meeting where there might not be a lot of additional information to share.
So I would ask the board then, is there a motion to approve the Town of Pittsburgh proposed project list with possible modifications if staff felt that those were appropriate and would assist us in scoring better? 7.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Bonitz, seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under new business, we have several amendments, which Jennifer Eakes is on with us with Zoom, but is not feeling well today, but our manager will take us through those 3 particular amendments.
Thank you, Mayor. For the first one, which I believe is holidays and leave of absence policy, this is looking that sick leave policy be amended to include 24 hours of bereavement leave for the death in the employee's immediate family. And then it lists there what that immediate family consists of. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
We wanted to give folks more time. Obviously, if they lose someone very close to them, I don't know what the current policy is, but it wasn't near enough time. So we're just trying to make that more of a amenable policy for families.
Do we do each one of these at a time?
Right now, this is just discussion. We just wanted to see how the board felt about these, and we could probably stick them on the consent agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, my only comment on the bereavement leave is it says it has a whole list of things, and then it says aunt or uncle of the employee or the spouse of the employee. So I think that's further than I've seen other policies goes, or I've seen it say, you know, if and I think what may be missing, it's guardian is there, but you know, if somebody was raised by someone who didn't fit the other categories, but aunt and uncle of the employee's spouse, you know, or the employee, you know, in some cases, I think is exceptional, which may be what we want to do, but I don't know. I'm not an HR expert in the current, you know, brains either, but
We can add a line that says other situations can be approved by the town manager, which makes it super broad,
That's a nice idea.
if you so choose.
And correct me, is that removing the aunt and uncle?
We'll leave that. That was add a separate line. Said other situations can be approved by the town manager. That way you kind of really leave it open. Would you say, are you trying to get rid of the aunt and uncle?
I think remove, if we remove aunt and uncle,
Okay,
I write and say, you know, other situations just by the town manager. I think
Gotcha.
that's.
I don't want to feel cold about that, but I did check on a couple other, the county does not include the aunt and uncle in there. And I know our state, when I worked in the state, they did not include that also.
okay. Good on that one?
All right, yes, I think that gives a good idea for the consent agenda on that one.
The next one is mental health leave, up to 5 days per fiscal year may be used and charged to sick leave. So this is not additional time. This is basically mental health leave, so they can use their sick time as mental health leave. So this is just allowing for that use of sick time.
Yep. Excellent.
Okay. And the last one was 24 hours of paid leave for community engagement leave. We had some employees that wanted to take off to go to functions with their children's school and couldn't due to some issues. Also, this would allow for folks to take off to volunteer for nonprofit agencies. So if they wanted, you know, help build a house for, you know, Habitat for Humanity, they could do that, and that would be paid leave.
So I think this says that our current policy allows for parental school leave. But you said there was issues with people taking that.
Yes, I think it does allow for school leave, but not the nonprofit or community assistance.
Okay.
Or community organizations, rather.
Okay. And I think what I'd like to add, because we are the town of Pittsburgh, that I would like to add nonprofits or community organizations that operate in the town of Pittsburgh leave for that.
Okay.
And not broader, but I don't know what
Can you
others.
make it Chatham County?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to be too constrained there.
So for volunteering for nonprofits or community organizations in Chatham County,
Say that operate in Chatham County.
operate in Chatham County.
I had a question I was going to ask, not specific to these three policies, but if Jennifer had been here, so it may not be fair for you, but I'm still going to ask anyway. I was just going to ask what our town's parental leave policy looks like, if it includes dads, adoptions, or if there's room for improvement there at the same time.
So parental leave is something that we are discussing. I believe Jennifer is looking at what several other municipalities have and counties to see what those range. You know, you've got Durham, who I believe does 12 weeks for both parents for pretty much, you know, it's wide open. When I was in Lewisburg, we did 3 weeks for the father, 6 weeks for the mother. And that was for birth, adoption, or guardianship. That was probably the lowest one I had seen, but that was all I could get past in Lewisburg. So she's been looking at some options and
Great.
and one of the reasons why we wanted to do this as a discussion, because I thought that may be a topic that would come up. But if that's something the board is interested in us bringing to you, we will do that.
I'm interested.
Good. All right.
All right, we'll put it together for you.
Thank you. I think just generally what you mentioned in the budget discussion about being a employer of choice in Chatham County or greater, I think this goes a long way to it, that we might not always be able to compete on salary, but we can compete in some of these other policies that have less cost impact. And
And these policies don't cost us money because the salaries are already budgeted. So, all right, we'll put it together for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And so we have no matters for miscellaneous tonight. And we have no closed session, so are there any final concerns that need to be addressed by the board? Yeah, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Bonitz. Second by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries